People scramble to get to work after Typhoon Higo skirted the city. A detainee at an immigration facility diagnosed with the coronavirus, sparking fears of a new infection cluster. And in the United States, Democrats formally nominate Joe Biden for president.
Hello and a very good evening. The observatory cancelled all tropical cyclone warning signals early this afternoon, hours after Typhoon Higos made landfall in Zhuhai this morning. Before that, the increasing gale or storm signal number 9 was in force in the city for more than 6 hours.
Once again, low-lying areas in Tai-O were flooded, but not as seriously as some typhoons in the past. Pinky Wong reports.
Howling wind and heavy rain in the early hours of today. The observatory issued the first number 9 tropical cyclone warning signal of the year at 1:30 a.m. when Typhoon Higos got close to the territory. But the authorities appealed to the public to stay away from the seashore did not stop storm chasers at Hanfachun. The housing estate in the Eastern District was severely battered in 2018 when severe Typhoon Mangkhut hit the city and the number 9 signal was in force. This man said he was also at Hanfachun when Mangkhut swept past Hong Kong. He said the storm was stronger back then. In Wan Chai, a 10-meter banner was blown off a building and police arrived to take it down. Over in Tsim Sha Tsui, the storm did not scare off pedestrians near the pier. This 12-year-old, who's enthusiastic about storm chasing, said he got his mother's permission to be out, donning his protective helmet and face shield. I'm excited to see a typhoon in real life other than learning about it from books, he said. As of 11:20 this morning, the authorities had received 53 reports of fallen trees. Traffic at one time was affected near Kawaiman Road in Kennedy Town. Firefighters and police were deployed to remove the obstacles. A similar scene in Saigon. The Drainage Service Department has confirmed 2 flooding cases. In the low-lying area of Tai-O, residents braced themselves for heavy rain and backflow of water with flood barriers set up. This restaurant owner said he had moved a lot of things, including the refrigerator, indoors as he's worried the stuff would be washed away. Police, firefighters and civil aid service personnel were sent to the area to evacuate people if needed. This resident said the water level reached the top of the fences last time, but it's much lower this time around at around 3 meters high. The hospital authority noted that as of 11 a.m., 7 people had sought treatment at public hospital in storm-related incidents. Pinky Wong, TVB News.
People rushed to work later in the day after the observatory downgraded storm signals for Typhoon Higos. That led to post-typhoon traffic jams at around noon.
Dong Yao Nie talked to some of those waiting for buses and other transport at one of the city's busiest traffic hubs.
Typhoon Higos changes fast and acts speedily, and so do the city's commuters. Minutes after the typhoon signal was lowered to number 3 at 11 a.m., many appeared at the Hong Kong Cross Harbour Tunnel bus stop, well prepared to get back to the office.
It's normal. After typhoon, the traffic will be very, very busy. So I better get earlier, then I can get up the bus.
Some early birds even waited at this MTR station hours before train services resumed, just to secure a seat at the peak time. The rush hour came after noon. In Hong Kong, buses were full, long queues at the bus stops winding all the way along the footbridge.
How long do you expect it will take?
2 hours.
There were similar scenes in Siu Sai Wan and at the Central Ferry piers. Still, this man was happy that the government improved its monitoring and communication of the storm status and gave them a heads up.
I think it's better than last year.
a very immediate notice, and they announced the typhoon will change during the around 7 or 8 o'clock this morning. So for the preparations, we can do better.
At around 1:30 p.m., the crowds have mostly disappeared, with only about a dozen passengers lining up for buses of each route, and most commuters are satisfied with the public transport arrangement.
Although Hong Kongers are used to the annual typhoon season, some see a few differences this year due to a new trend.
A lot of people work from home right now, and also our company has got some remote working process, so still I've got to work in the morning.
Still, the Federation of Trade Unions wants the government to legalize exemptions for employees who have to go to work under extreme weather conditions. In response, the Labor Department said employers shouldn't cut salaries or days off for those who arrive late after a strong cyclone. Dong Yaonie, TVB News.
Evolving through a full spectrum of storm signals, Typhoon Higos came and went in less than a day. That makes for the fastest pace in more than 4 decades. Here's more from Kana Chu and an expert she spoke to.
In the space of under 22 hours, Higos, a Chamorro term for the fig fruit, strengthened from a tropical storm to a typhoon.
To the east of Hong Kong, we have a pretty strong subtropical anticyclone for an area of high pressure. And that provides a strong steering current. You can liken a typhoon to be a small boat in a river. So if you have swift water flowing rapidly, then the typhoon will move fast. This is the case for Typhoon Higos.
On Tuesday, 3:40 a.m., the observatory issued the standby signal number 1 as Higos moved towards the region. Nearly 12 hours later, the weather forecaster upgraded the storm warning to the strong wind signal number 3 before bumping it up to the number 8 southeast gale or storm signal at 10:40 p.m. In just about 3 more hours, Higos was up by another notch to the second gravest number 9 signal. While it was skirting Hong Kong early this morning, the impact of Typhoon Higos was most felt when wind gusts of up to 130 kilometers per hour were recorded. Roughly 3.5 hours later, the storm signal was downgraded back to number 3. And by 1:20 p.m., all storm warnings were scrapped. Lasting for a total of 21 hours and 50 minutes, Higos ranks 4th among Hong Kong's shortest living storms on record. Following Super Typhoon Hope in 1979, Higos is also the most rapidly evolving typhoon in 41 years, subsiding just 5 minutes sooner than Typhoon Dujian that lashed the city in 2003.
Over the past 40 years, we've seen a lot of changes in the climate system, and that will give rise to a certain trend. In the future, we're not going to see more typhoons, but when a typhoon comes, it's more likely to be a stronger typhoon.
Kana Chu, TVB News.
Over in Macau, all tropical cyclone signals were cancelled at 3:30 p.m. The low-lying areas near the coastline of the inner harbour were flooded. The Enclave's Weather Agency issued the signal number 10 at 5 a.m. That was replaced with the signal number 8 at 7:30 a.m. All land ports between Zhuhai and Macau were closed at 6 a.m. when the number 10 signal was still in effect. The border gate and the Zhuhai-Macau cross-boundary industrial zone reopened at 10 a.m. On to some other news, and Hong Kong today reported the lowest number of new COVID-19 cases since mid-July, with a total number of 26 infections over the past 24 hours. The death toll, meanwhile, reached 72, after the coronavirus claimed the life of one more elderly patient.
As Jackie Lin reports, a newly diagnosed Thai detainee at an immigration facility has sparked fears of possible outbreaks there.
The 37-year-old Thai man arrived in Hong Kong late October after being arrested for overstaying his visa on Sunday. He was sent to the Castle Peak Bay Immigration Center. There, the man was diagnosed with COVID-19. 3 inmates sharing the same quarters and 2 immigration officers will be quarantined.
They have tested more than 1,400 tests because it's still an enclosed area. That's why we are a bit concerned whether there's any chance of transmission, although he only stayed there for 1 or 2 days. That's why we will give another round of tests.
That involves around 200 staff members and 400 detainees. While the Thai patient has stayed in Chunwan over the past months, authorities say he has been uncooperative in providing other information to help with contact tracing. For other cases, 2/3 are linked to previous infections. They include a security guard at the virus-stricken Kwai Chung container terminal and one more 98-year-old senior resident of a Kowloon Bay elderly care home. 3 are newly imported cases, all from India. As numerous recent cases have involved passengers of Air India, the airline has been banned from flying into Hong Kong for 2 weeks. Jackie Lin, TVB News.
U.S. Democrats formally nominated Joe Biden for president, vowing that his election would repair a pandemic-battered America and end the chaos that has defined the presidency of Donald Trump.
The second night of the party's 4-day national convention featured more of America's rising political stars, as well as elder statesmen and women who all made the case for Joe Biden.
Democrats formally nominated Joe Biden as their 2020 presidential nominee, as party officials and activists from across the United States gave the former U.S. vice president their overwhelming support during the party's all-virtual national convention. The roll call of convention delegates formalized what has been clear for months since Biden took the lead in the primary elections chase for the nomination. Later, more Democratic Party heavyweights spoke in support of Biden and on the need to defeat Donald Trump in November's election. Former President Bill Clinton was especially critical of Trump's handling of the COVID pandemic.
COVID hit us much harder than it had to. We have just 4% of the world's population, but 25% of the world's COVID cases. Our unemployment rate is more than twice as high as South Korea's, 2.5 times the United Kingdom's, more than 3 times Japan's. Donald Trump says we're leading the world. Well, we are the only major industrial economy to have its unemployment rate tripled.
Later today, California Senator Kamala Harris will accept the Democratic Party's vice presidential nomination. She will be the first woman of Black and South Asian heritage to be named to a major party presidential ticket.
Kamala Harris is the first Black woman nominee for a major party, and that there's a real possibility that she might win and can affect change. And so I think people are overall excited and happy that, we have someone that we can root for and that, we may see a change.
Black voters, especially women, are a critical part of the Democratic coalition and could sway the results in critical states such as Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, North Carolina, and Florida.
Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump says he does not want to deal with China now and that cancelling the Phase 1 trade deal with Beijing remains a possibility. Trump says he's taking a tough line because of his frustration about China's initial handling of the pandemic and its failure to contain the spread of the disease last December and January.
I postponed talks with China. You know why? I don't want to deal with them now. I don't want to deal with them now. With what they did to this country and to the world, I don't want to talk to China right now, okay?
Trump also said his political opponent, Joe Biden, would sell America out to the Chinese and give them everything. Trump was in Arizona for a briefing on the construction of the border wall. And there he repeated a key campaign promise from 4 years ago that Mexico would ultimately pay for the wall's construction.
Soldiers who ousted Mali's president and government in a military coup are promising to restore stability and oversee a transition to elections within a reasonable period. Mali's president resigned and dissolved parliament late on Tuesday, hours after the mutineers detained him at gunpoint. It has plunged the country, already facing a jihadist insurgency and mass protests, deeper into crisis. It's still not clear who led the revolt or who will preside over the military junta. The coup has been condemned worldwide.
And still ahead on tonight's news. Exiled Belarusian opposition politician calls for EU support for new presidential elections at her home country.
Welcome back. Exiled Belarusian opposition politician Svetlana Tikhanovskaya has called on EU leaders to support new presidential elections with international supervision.
As protests and strikes grow over believed rigged elections, Lithuania has become the first country to say it does not recognize incumbent President Alexander Lukashenko as an elected president and hopes other Western countries will follow suit. Leslie Tang has more.
Stretching into a second week of protests, thousands came out in force at Minsk's main Independence Square. Protesters were once again pushing for authoritarian President Alexander Lukashenko to step down. Demonstrations have been taking place daily in Belarus after Lukashenko extended his 26-year rule in an election widely seen as rigged. He's responded with a violent police crackdown on peaceful protesters. It's prompted thousands of workers to strike across the country. His opponent, Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, who is in exile in Lithuania, declared her readiness to act. In response, Lukashenko called establishing the council an attempt to grab power. We have enough tools to cool those hotheads, he said. Meanwhile, EU leaders will discuss the situation, with a spokesperson saying the EU Commission's president has been tracking developments.
And she has also expressed repeatedly her expectation that the European Union takes strong measures to hold to account those responsible for violence, repression of peaceful protests, and the falsification of election results.
Leslie Tang, TVB News.
Authorities in Mauritius have arrested the captain of the Japanese ship that ran aground and spilled 1,000 tons of oil on the island's protected coastline. Sunil Kumar Nandeshwar, who is from India, was charged with endangering safe navigation and is in custody pending a bail hearing next week. The MV Wakashio ran aground a coral reef in July. After being pounded by heavy waves for several days, the vessel cracked and started leaking oil. The damaged ship leaked oil into the turquoise waters of one of the island's most pristine coastal areas. Most of the remaining 3,000 tons of fuel was pumped off the ship before it split in two. However, green groups are warning the damage could be irreversible. And the pandemic is forcing several annual events in Hong Kong to cancel or move online. And Dine Festival, slated for October and November, will go ahead as scheduled, but now as a virtual event. While it might be less of a sensory experience, the organizers say plenty of discounts and cooking tutorials will be offered online to participants.
And that's all from us at TVB News.
Thanks. Good night.